That is 7 a.m. here and all the time zones moving on. So I think we should get started. So welcome everyone to this AMA session, and we've got two EC members here to talk about different parts of their jobs and answer questions on the Slido. Please do visit the Slido and ask questions throughout, or anybody who wants to can pop on with their video and or audio to ask a question live. So first, actually, should we have Aniruddha and Regina introduce themselves, just say a little bit about what their EC role is and kind of some of their ongoing work, and then we can start with the questions. Aniruddha, would you like to go first?
Sure, unless Regina has something special. Yeah, I could go. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Aniruddha Joshi. And I am the VP Finance on the SIGCHI AC. So I come, I started my HCI work I work in India. I work in the IDC School of Design in Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. And I have been associated with several conferences before I became active within the SIGCHI. So I was associated with India HCI and then the Interact conference, and then I have been on the Interact TC13, and then I sort of joined the Asian Development Committee about 6 years ago almost, and then I have been the SIGCHI EC VP Finance since about 4 years now. That's a little bit about myself. Over to Regina.
Yeah, Regina Bernhard. I'm back at EC now for 8 weeks. As most of you might have been noticing, I was sending quite some emails in the last 18 months because I was General Chair for CHI 2020. And currently, in terms of communication, I was taking over again from Pageman, who is going on a year-long sabbatical for the last 10 months of this EC period. You can ask me anything, as we typically say, but especially it's about, of course, getting your input for how to better reach out in these kind of changing times to our community and how to support the community, of course, better. And whatever thoughts you have on membership and of course also then on associated pricing models that ACM will have to come up with within the next year, I would say. Good.
Lovely, thank you both. And yeah, I realize I also forgot to just say hello myself. So hi, I'm Julie Rica Williamson, and I'm the VP for Publications chairing this session. So I wanted to just call a quick call out to the Slido. I'll drop that in the chat, but please do jump onto the Slido if you have any other questions. So there are a couple questions here in the Slido, so I'd like to start. This is a kind of more general question, but I definitely think that both of you are really well placed to kind of answer some of these questions. So can we start with, what is ACM SIGCHI doing to promote HCI research in African countries?
Yeah.
So,
cool.
You want to go first? Yeah, Regina, please go ahead.
So typically, promoting HCI research is one of the things that it's about. We are not a financing institution, even if we have here the VP for Finances, and we would love to have research done sponsored by SIGCHI. It is very unusual, of course, to support these kind of activities. But when it comes, of course, to anything which is around the research activities, in terms of dissemination, in terms of setup and fostering these kind of communities, the first thing is, of course, that we have local chapters, and the local chapters is something where I know that NSR is trying to foster these kind of activities more and more. In these kind of changing times, overall, I think the benefit is that it's not only what we are going to do to support African HCI research, but it's about how to support people all over the world, which are not having the possibility to travel, and now nobody can travel anymore. So the whole EC is now working on digitalizing and making things more virtual and making more access available not only to resources. So as you know, the ACM library, for example, is open for everyone at the moment, but also in fostering now the communities to allow to share the knowledge when it comes to teaching, and also to share the knowledge, of course, as I said before, when it comes to research. Aniruddha, you want to add?
Yeah, so I wanted to just sort of give a quick reminder to everyone about the kind of funding opportunities that are available. Although we don't fund research per se, we do fund lots of activities around that. First of all, we have a whole bunch of grants. We have the student travel grant, which supports students to travel to conferences. Right now, not much travel is happening, so perhaps there are not many opportunities, but as soon as they start opening up, people could take advantage of those. We have the Gary Marsden Fund, which focuses on developing countries, and so that's sort of many countries from Africa could sort of apply there. People from Africa could apply there. Then there is the Early Career Development Fund. There is the chapter grants, and there are many chapters already in Africa, and we actually encourage people to form even more chapters, which are meant to kind of bring the community together locally. We also have a development fund, which is a pot of money where people from the community can propose activities and sort of get funded for that. In the past, a lot of people have used this money to organize summer and winter schools, and we are constantly looking for more opportunities there. And we also we have started a very new initiative, which is basically called a West Asia and Africa Development Committee. And Neha, if she's still around, yeah, Neha is there. Yeah. So, well, I must appreciate the commitment of Neha here. It's 2 a.m. in Atlanta, and she's still here to answer questions. So Neha, you want to add, you had a lot of things to add here.
Sure, I can add that to respond to this question. So firstly, I wanted to just mention that we do have travel awards. We're going through a process of overhauling those to try and see how to better cater to our community. So if you noticed, we had a survey out to the travel awardees in the past few years. And based on the feedback that we got from them, we've redesigned our travel awards program. And that was mainly to take advantage of this period when travel is kind of restricted. So you'll be seeing updates about that soon, because we're redesigning the travel application form and also some of the rules around giving travel awards. And this is mainly to just address the feedback that we received. In addition, we're currently in conversation with HCI researchers in Egypt, in Namibia, and South Africa. And this is to identify the best ways of working together to support the growth of HCI in general and the SIGCHI community in Africa. And so far, this has entailed surveying members recently to see what format they would like this partnership to be in, while also committing budget funds towards this objective. And then in addition to providing financial support and travel awards, we also want to make existing HCI research much more visible. And so for this, we've been brainstorming potential activities such as conducting interviews with African HCI researchers. And this Friday, in fact, there's one, and so you'll see that soon on our media publication. And also generating blog posts around events happening in African chapters, such as Cairo Kai, and then also other labs and projects at regular intervals. In addition to that, some of the things that have come up recently have been issues around reviewing and how scholarship from African scholars has been read and received in recent times. And so we've also been talking about these in relation to Kai in particular, and how we can think about composing guidelines for the PC to review this work with greater care. So those are all of the things that came to mind when I saw this question. And there is a lot that's happening, but I will say that right now it's a little bit slower because everyone just has a lot going on. Yeah.
Thank you, Neha.
Cool, thank you. So let's move on to the next question, which I'm sure is on a lot of people's minds. So how is SIGCHI dealing with conference cancellations financially?
So Regina, you want to go on that first? And
I
then
start first and then you explain what happens. So I can explain what happened for CHI 2020, which is, of course, we were in the process of preparing things, and CHI is a very big conference compared to other ones. So normally a CHI budget is around 2.5–3 million US dollars. And of course, there were lots of costs when it was clear that we had to cancel, that were already there because people were working on it, and then we made our commitments. And interestingly, SIGCHI, which is the only SIG within ACM, was taking over the whole financial responsibility for all the conferences, and is currently from their standard budget paying all the costs which were accumulated by the different kinds of conferences, which was, as far as I understand, especially for CHI, it's a special point, of course, because it's a high-risk conference, but for other conferences, it will allow them to operate also for the next years in the future. If this question implies to know how much we are currently losing, and I'm sure Aniruddha knows better, but especially for CHI, for example, there's still negotiation going on for lots of the contracts we have been signing. And sometimes we get some support, and some of the conference centers are more lenient, so they allow you to cancel without any fees, and other ones are not. And for the whole community, of course, most of these conference centers, they are lenient now because they ask you to come back. So don't be too upset if you see CHI coming back to a non-sustainable area, which is called Honolulu, because of these kind of negotiations that most of the people, of course, which had canceled conferences were promising to come back. And this might be a pattern then that will reoccur for lots of other conferences. But Aniruddha knows the details maybe a bit better now for the current state.
yeah, so actually, just a bit better. So CHI conference actually had in some sense, the biggest cost of among the conferences for two reasons. Firstly, it's the biggest conference that we run, but also because it happened. I mean, the timing of the conference was just at the time. I mean, it was just a month before that. Actually, many of the travel restrictions started appearing, and many constraints started appearing, and so there was very little time to do anything, like, for example, to have a virtual conference perhaps, or do anything else about it. Since then, then there were some minor losses still in the conferences that happened. So remember, I must actually remind everybody that the SIGCHI runs 24 conferences around the year. And although the CHI is the biggest one, there are many smaller conferences also. And so the conferences that happened about till June had some impact of immediate cancellations. But conferences that have been happening after June have sort of adjusted to a virtual role since then, and they have sort of rebudgeted themselves. And the volunteers who organize that conference, a big shout out to them for putting together a virtual program in a fairly short period of time. So what we are looking at now, it looks like, I mean, of course, the situation is still changing and still uncertain, but it looks like now most of the conferences going forward from here will break even, and so we should not have too much of a impact. And so yes, and the other thing I wanted to say is, Regina mentioned that the SIGCHI is absorbing the financial losses, so then it is natural to worry that this will actually have a long-term effect on SIGCHI's finances. So fortunately, what we have done is we have managed to cut down on the travel, because no travel is happening. So we have managed to cut down all the travel and the meeting costs, the physical meeting costs. And that has helped us actually to stay above what is the minimum balance required by the ACM for organizing our activities from year to year. So I think at the end of the year, which is June 2021, we should still be reasonably comfortable when we hand over to the next EC. Yeah, back to Julie.
Perfect. So yeah, I wanted to just take a quick moment to call out that actually this Zoom call is the first one that we are using the live Otter AI live notes. And so this is a live captioning service. This is really exciting, not only for everybody to have a good immediate caption of the event, but also obviously this improves the accessibility of these events. So this is a really exciting thing. This is the first day that we're trying it, and we're obviously hoping to use this long-term to improve the accessibility of Zoom calls and public-facing calls of the EC. So that's quite an exciting new initiative. Thank you to EC members, Ayman, Shama, who helped make this happen. So what I wanted to do, yeah, it's exciting. I'm very excited about it. So what I wanted to do was just open up the floor for any other questions, anybody who's on the call, anybody who's on Slido. Otherwise, I might ask a question of these chairs. I'll try to put them through their paces. All right, so for Aniruddha and Regina, for you, what is your kind of main priority right now as an EC member, and what are your kind of immediate next steps that you're working on at the moment?
Regina, you want to go first?
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so since taking over again, you have seen that there has been a public call for additionally associate chair positions on the EC, which are for community outreach. So there is a position which will, close together with communication, try to react to the challenging times we are currently in and supporting the outreach to different kinds of communities. As everything became virtual and people do not have the possibility to travel anymore, we also saw that lots of assumptions which have recently been made by my predecessor were maybe too much focused on the closest communities like in North America. And we know that we are not serving very, very well people, especially in Asia, which are using different kinds of social media. We know we have, of course, huge barriers with countries like China, where it's difficult that all the content has to be also on a static website to be made accessible. So we're currently improving these kind of outreach processes. And one of the big things that the next 10 months we'll see is, yeah, again, a redesign of the website to support the community better and to restructure these kind of things, getting social media up a bit more, especially for some of the areas like coming up for Korea, coming up also for other Asian countries, and especially also for the South. So we are currently working with people in Brazil to try to figure out what would be the best means to serve the purpose. The other thing, of course, is that membership and communication. So communication is the one thing, but membership is the other one, that we are currently revisiting membership. What does membership mean? And why would you become a member? And why is it important these kind of times to be a member of a group? I mean, there are so many people out there. I know we have on LinkedIn about 8,000 or 9,000 people which think that they are a SIGCHI member. But I can tell you that my membership database has a very, very different number. So there is a misconception between what people think. So they think they're a member of the HSI community, but of course they do not want to pay the fee, which is relatively low if you only become a SIGCHI member. I'm not talking about ACM membership, I'm talking about SIGCHI. So if you want to see this kind of membership, you might want to have a benefit, and we are working on supporting these kind of memberships in the future. On one hand side, of course, in terms of technology. So to have an area where especially members can benefit from additional material, other types of support, maybe even support in terms of career development, and have that also as a personalized space, because we have lots of requests from people in today's changing world that suddenly you need more evidence of what you have been doing. In the past, everyone saw, like especially for me, that the CHI General Chair was standing in front of 3,000 people waving a bit, and this was the video showing that you did your job. But today, of course, lots of things are virtual and people need certificates. People need these kind of things documented, and so we're working on and thinking about how to support people for their careers in the future. Once they are a member, that they can show better what they are doing, how they invest a lot of their private time, and help them also in their careers in terms of career development.
Yeah, good. I just wanted to kind of pick up a couple of things on what Regina said, and then I'll kind of move into my bit. I just wanted to emphasize for everyone that actually there are two different kinds of memberships. There is the ACM membership and there is the ACM SIGCHI membership. And although we say that enough number of times, I think many people do not know the difference between them. So I just wanted to say that maybe you are an ACM member and not an ACM SIGCHI member. So just go and check if you are, that is the case. The second thing that I wanted to talk about, which is sort of maybe possibly a lot of interest to people in Asia and also in many other regions, is that we actually have different membership rates depending on which country you come from. And this is an ACM policy that they actually offer a different membership rates. So many of the countries actually have the advantage of having a much cheaper membership rate for both ACM and ACM SIGCHI. So please do check it out. The cheapest one is for students from developing countries, and that's about $6. So it's not really very expensive. So I just wanted to do that. Okay, coming to the priorities that I've been working on with respect to my role as VP Finance. So there have been actually, I would kind of divide those priorities into the ones that were there before we were hit by the pandemic and the ones that sort of started appearing or becoming more important after the pandemic. So I'll start with the before first. So before the pandemic, one of my priorities or one of the challenges that we actually, so finance is always a challenge, right? I mean, either you have too much money or too little money, and either ways it is a challenge. So ACM SIGCHI is a volunteer-based, not-for-profit organization. And one of the things that we've been therefore doing is to kind of put in all the money that we have in developing our community in different ways and supporting our community to do so, or do nice things that we would all like to do. So while we've been doing these activities, we have been running a whole bunch of projects, and we've been allocating a whole bunch of money to kind of to help us do those projects. And one of the challenges that we have faced in the past is that we have not been successful in either utilizing all the money or so we've been having sort of, in a sense, much more money than we were required to have at ACM. And so one of the priorities was that how do we actually use up the money that we have so that we can support and develop the community in a sustainable sort of a way. One of the reasons why we couldn't do it is our accounting system. So our accounting systems were sort of based on certain different priorities. And over the last couple of years, we have made changes. So we have kind of made it a lot easier now to track how projects are doing and whether we are spending, we are able to spend money on projects. It's quite surprising, but we couldn't track that easily earlier. And that's something that's been a priority. And so that transition started the last financial year, and that transition is continuing in this financial year. And probably the benefit of that is going to be seen in the next financial year when we start getting some historical data on projects. And that will help the budgeting going forward. So that's something that we've been doing for the last couple of years. The thing that actually changed, impacted quite a bit is obviously COVID-19. So after COVID-19, all the budget and all the projects that we worked on sort of went for a toss when all the travel restrictions came in and the conferences and events that we plan don't happen physically anymore and so on. So one of the priority for me is to leave, when I leave the EC in June 2021, I would like to ensure that we have a reasonable balance going forward so that when things get physical, which they are likely to get in the next financial year, we do have the money to support the travel and all the activities that people want to do from our community. So that is, with that perspective, then we are doing 2-3 things. One is we are monitoring all the conference budgets a lot more closely. We are monitoring all our expenses a lot more closely, and we're keeping a lot more regular track of how we are doing. And it will soon be October, which means it will be the time for us to start planning for the next financial year. and we're just about wrapping up the last financial year budget. So it's kind of becoming a year-round activity this year. So that's what's keeping me busy.
Yeah, so maybe I can ask a kind of follow-on question for both of you. So when we talk about some of these budgets, you know, for SIGCHI, where does the money come from? And in a conference budget, where does the money come from? So for CHI 2020 and for the SIGCHI budget, can you guys answer that?
Let's do the conference first, I guess. It's kind of easier.
Sure. Okay.
So for conference, of course, like everyone in all the other 24 conferences, is not only CHI. ACM has a regulation that when you organize a conference, you have to come up with a budget. And this budget has to be balanced. So in the budget, of course, you have all the costs which are related typically to renting the physical space, for feeding people a bit of snacks and some coffee, and all the other activities which are including having the technicians, having even sometimes invited keynotes, paying their travel to come for the keynote. And all these kind of budgets and these kind of costs have on the other side a so-called conference fee. What is typically not mentioned is that, of course, there is also a huge amount, and Julie knows that best, a huge amount of money which is spent on the publication process per se, of how to get the papers in. So, of course, the systems we are using, it's something that is getting developed. We use these kind of submission systems. We use registration systems. So there's a huge amount of cost, which is also not related to what the conference attendee is seeing, but also which is related to the publication. And these kind of costs normally for a conference are offset, if possible, by the registration costs. So for any conference running, normally this offset has to be balanced in a way that let me say, normal members typically pay a fee that makes it reasonable to run that conference. What we know is that for SIGCHI, that the support of students is an extremely important one. And when you look at CHI, we are now with every student, if we do a so-called cost-benefit analysis and a ratio, with every student attending the conference is losing money. And this kind of money you lose because a student participation fee does not even cover the average cost of a participant. That has to be offset somewhere, and the offset, of course, is the cost for people which already are in their careers, are not students anymore. So there's also balancing between these kind of numbers. And the more students attend the conference, of course, it's better for the patient, but it's also more troublesome for conference chairs to run an equal budget. So there are lots of strategies coming into these kind of conference budgets, but for conferences per se and for CHI, of course, this is offset by people paying to attend the conference. And this is also by the future. There will be, of course, something to be paid, because it's not only for the coffee you're going to take, which I know we all have now at home and we can drink our coffee, but it's also about, of course, the backend and all the work which is done also, especially, of course, for CHI on a professional level, because you cannot run that anymore. Yeah. Aniruddha even has the coffee mug, so I think we are going to send them maybe in the future so people can have a bit of better experience once they have a virtual one. So for the future, for the transition now, of course, these kind of costs for publication and backend, they will stay. And that's what you also see reflected in most of the conferences.
Right. So yeah, so I'll start with the conferences also. First of all, I wanted to emphasize that all conferences, when they create the budget, they don't create a budget to make a profit. They actually make what is called as a break-even budget. Okay, so they want to make sure that they are not charging their participants too much. Although there are internal subsidies. So for example, the student registration is a little lower, and that sort of pays a little bit for the professional registration. So the professional registration pays a little bit for the students and covers the costs in that way. However, from time to time, what happens is that the expected number of students suddenly goes up. I mean, we get a lot more student registration than what was budgeted for. And sometimes the conference does make a loss. But in fact, because the organizers are careful and they plan it properly and they try to use a lot of estimation and past experience, they actually end up breaking even till about the last minute, and then suddenly at the last minute, usually there is a whole bunch of new people who turn up for the conference, and the conference makes a small surplus. So yes, the conferences, if you look at all the historical budget data, then conferences do make a small surplus, but it is a really small surplus, and that comes mainly as a result of prudent planning rather than any design to make a profit on the conference. So conferences actually make just a little better than break even. The other revenue that people think might be a revenue is the membership membership dues that people pay, ACM SIGCHI, and we do make a fair amount of revenue from our membership, but in fact, all of that gets balanced out against the printed issues of interactions. So we actually print issues of interactions and then send it out to members. So the cost of interactions is approximately equal. Well, not exactly, it goes up and down from year to year, depending on the conditions and where we ship and so on, but approximately equal to the cost of printing and shipping out interactions in the physical form. So as far as SIGCHI is concerned, actually, it's a break-even cost, the dues. So the third major source of our revenue then is the ACM digital library. And this is what brings us back to the publications part of it. Because and Julie, you can probably add to what changes are happening in the DL front and so on. But so revenue for the ACM SIGCHI has been the digital library then in the past. And so those are the three main sources. There are minor incomes that come from other sources, which are really very small and not even in the percentage of the thing. Yeah. So, but Julie, you want to add something about the digital library?
Yeah, so the way our digital library revenue works, I mean, you may be aware that most of the digital library is supported by subscriptions from libraries. So university libraries, research institute libraries, any kind of industrial organizations who are paying for digital library access. So that is where the vast majority of the income comes from. And what is done there is because the conferences are producing a huge amount of content, and that is typically paid for by the conferences. So SIGCHI is putting in a fair amount of money to produce the conference content. Then ACM takes a kind of portion of the profits, or I shouldn't say profits, rather the income from libraries, and actually distributes that to the SIGs based on downloads. So that is the kind of basic process. But the thing is that ACM is changing how they're kind of doing their financial model for the digital library. So ACM has made a commitment within 5 years to go open access if a financial model can be developed to do that. So this might be changing a bit, but we'll see what happens there. But there's a lot of different initiatives that are being looked at. For example, a kind of model where we have article processing fees to cover the kind of missing revenue from libraries. We could also look at things like a read and publish agreement. There's actually quite a large group of universities in the US doing this already. This is a case where basically a library buys into a gold open access kind of publishing agreement with the ACM digital library. So they're paying to read, that's the normal subscription fee, and then publish. So they're paying a little bit of a higher fee, and all the articles from that institution are gold open access. So you can look at the list of institutions in the US and Europe who are already doing this. For example, I know there's a kind of nationwide consortium in Ireland doing read and publish agreements. So this is a kind of another route to open access. That means those institutions that are publishing a lot pay a little bit more into the system, but they're getting gold open access as well. So it's a kind of new model as well. SIGCHI is also looking at different models where we might look at different places of getting revenue to cover publication costs and go gold open access as well as part of this kind of 5-year plan at ACM. So there's the finances there are probably going to be changing quite a lot. But the kind of take home message is that basically the balance of revenues and costs still needs to be at that break even point, which is where it is now. ACM is also a nonprofit organization. So everything's kind of in that break even place. So looking at financial models to do that is where we're at now. But I don't know if that, I hope that answers that question. A bit of a rant, but disrupted by a coffee grinder. So let me just check the Slido. Okay. So another question, which is kind of, again, a more general question, which is maybe a bit for early in the morning. But so what in each of your roles do you think is kind of the biggest challenge for transparency, and what are you doing to kind of help make SIGCHI a more transparent organization?
So maybe I could go. So actually, when I took over the role of VP Finance, I kind of, before that, I was associated only for a couple of years with the ACM SIGCHI in my role as a member of the Asian Development Committee that was recently set up. And actually, all this was just absolutely new for me. So in that sense, transparency came fairly naturally because first I had to understand, and then I had to ask a lot of people. So one of the things that I have been doing is actually trying to put down a process by which we are able to track how much money we are spending. And what I sort of was a little bit surprised to find out was that in the past, that was not tracked very well. It was probably in people's heads that how much money we are spending on different projects. But as I took over from the earlier group of people who were running it, I suddenly found myself asking every time. So I thought it was better to actually figure this out more systematically. So, and in fact, the reason why we put the projects together is because then we should be able to track. The other thing is that we've been writing every year a blog post or posting a video. This year, this is what we did about the financial status. And in fact, we do have a graph. I could pull that out in a minute if when Regina is answering her part of the question, where we actually track now how we are doing in terms of balances. Okay, and are we kind of stable? So I just pull the latest version of that out as soon as Regina starts talking about it. But we've been kind of putting this down, and then when I hand it over to the next VP Finance. So actually, the first thing to do is to sort of, I'm aiming for a nice transition over to the next VP Finance. And they actually get a nice dashboard of sorts of how we have been doing with respect to projects. And then the second level of transparency is actually within the SIGCHI EC and all the subcommittees that the SIGCHI EC sets up, and they actually get to know how they are doing in terms of their finances. And then, of course, we've been reporting this every year in the SIGCHI Town Hall meeting in CHI, which these AMA sessions are a part of, and therefore it may be a good idea to show the slide. Yeah, Regina, over to you, and I'll pull out my slide and then show that again.
Before you move, can I just ask a quick question? So sure. Given that the town hall this year was a little bit disrupted, if SIGCHI members want to see the current financial state of SIGCHI, where can they go?
Yeah, so this year we made the video presentations of all our SIGCHI members. And it is there somewhere on the SIGCHI website. I had to pull it out where the video is that Cliff was putting together for all the EC members. I don't have that with me right now, but I'll try to look that up also. But there is a video. I can put the link to my video on the in the chat and also in the slide. I'll do that also.
Thanks. Regina?
Yeah, Regina.
Yeah. Transparency is a difficult issue because people typically ask us questions about being more transparent, and I still don't know what should be more transparent. So people are asking, why did my paper get rejected? I'm really sorry, not even the general chairs knows why your paper got rejected, but you got your reviews, and why the decision was made like that is up to each individual conference. So if it's about content, transparency is something that SIGCHI as an executive committee does not have any access to. So it's not like we can see your data or we can help you with what is going on in our 24 individual conferences. When it comes to membership, of course, we have some reports about how many members we have. We are very, very careful in terms of GDPR to not give any kind of information to the outside world, which might be able to identify individual people. So yes, we have statistics which are about, and they are also on these kind of videos. They're also available on the website where our membership is coming from and what they are doing. But typically it's on a very, very high level, because if you break it down sometimes by country, I know that we have currently 12 members in Austria. So I know the 12 members immediately personally. So it's a bit of conflict between publishing data and then being able to identify a community and also pinpointing maybe people. So we're a bit more careful with this kind of personal data. But when it comes, of course, to data like how a conference is doing, it's already on the website. So every budget for all the conferences during the last 10 years, you can look it up on the website of how they were doing, for example. We have lots of information on available on different kinds of channels. And I know that we have to do a better job in communicating that it's there. I'm not sure if it's really about being even more transparent. It's more like telling people that it's already there, helping people to see this kind of information and then understand what is there. And as I said before, transparency per se is a difficult topic because it's so many different kinds of things that could be or should be maybe more transparent. But SIGCHI, EC, and especially membership is really just about the members. So the only thing that would be there is the numbers of people which are paying. And of course, in the process of the activities that the SIGCHI EC is doing, and this is now structured that we have also additionally these blog posts, the results go on the websites, they go on these kind of calls. So there's lots of information that is already available. And I think the next step is more like it's not only about transparency, it's more like accessibility and allowing people to have a better and quick overview for example, the most burning questions a new member might have. Because of course, a student coming in, they have a very, very different level of understanding of what is going on and what kind of needs they have in terms of, I want to know how that's working, compared to, of course, people which are with SIGCHI for more than 10 years.
Thank you. So,
okay, and my screen is ready, so I'll just take a second to show my screen. Okay, so this is in the, so Neha thankfully posted the playlist in the chat and people can take a look at that. And one of the videos there will be a presentation from VP Finances, and it has this particular slide in it, which basically shows over the years how we've been doing. The red line here shows the required balance according to the ACM guidelines of how much we need to have in our bank. The blue line shows how much we actually budget for. And the green line shows how much we end up with at the end of the year. And as you can see, there is always a difference in those three lines, particularly the blue line and the green line. So we've been getting more and more aggressive with our budgeting until this year when we suddenly said, okay, well, we decided to actually get aggressive so that we get by the end of the year, maybe as close to this as possible. And then we decided to, and then COVID-19 happened. So this year, now our priorities swung back a little to make sure that we actually have a reasonable cushion for the next financial year, because that's when many of the activities will pick up. So that's it. You can take a look at the video. It's there in the playlist, and Neha has added the link in the playlist in the chat, and I can also put it in the YouTube video when it comes out at the end of it. Yep. Julie.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so I've got another question, which is kind of more around, you know, in your specific roles, what different ways are there for people to get involved? What kind of volunteering roles have you been involved in this role or related to this role? How can people volunteer and get involved if they would like?
Yeah, so actually one of the things that I wanted to remind those people who are watching is elections are coming up for the new EC, first of all. So, and I'm going to take that question from that point of view. So as I said earlier, I started my career working in the HCI community within India. And in fact, we do have our own national conference every year. The next one is virtual in November, for example. And then we sort of, there's a bunch of people who started coming together and doing this from 2004. So we've been sort of fairly active for these years. And then subsequently, I got involved in the I50C13 community, which actually organizes the Interact conference. And I was associated in that role, in various roles with that conference until I became general chair in 2017 for the Interact conference. And I was also the treasurer of the I-50C13, so I took care of the budgets there for about 5 years before I handed it over to the next treasurer. And then when I joined the ADC and when the VP Finance there was moving, VP Finance, Dan Olson was the VP Finance before me, and when he wanted to move to another role within the EC, so they offered me this job. So that's how I became the VP Finance for the first time. And then when this EC came along, I was asked if I would be interested in running for the role of a treasurer. And I said, yeah, sure. This is something that I've been doing for a year now, and then it's an interesting job. So I've been doing it for the last 3 years after that. And I hope to look forward to attract somebody who's interested in taking this over from me in June this year. So if you are interested in this job, please sign up. There is already a call for nominating yourself for one of the roles on the EC. The elections will be held only next year, but the process is long, so you can nominate yourself now, and then the nominations will come out in December. Regina?
Yeah, how you, so I'm not sure if it's just for India or overall. So typically volunteering in any kind of research related activities is a growth process. And especially when you start as a student, normally on a master and PhD level, the best thing is, of course, to ask your supervisor. And your supervisor normally is bringing you into more the content side of organizing things. So this is about maybe doing first rounds of reviews for a poster category and these kind of activities. And if you are still on that level as a student, you might also consider supporting, especially when we go back to running physical conferences, to, for example, apply as a student volunteer. So you see how a conference is run, and you see how that is internally, of course, structured. And this is where you learn. You learn how to organize a conference, you see how the process is working. You also learn on the other side the content by then going to different kinds of reviewing stages. And once you have been a reviewer, most of the people are growing by becoming an AC, an associate chair, where they are helping in the review process. And most of the people I know, at least, which are on the content side, have been successfully doing these kind of things over the years, and are then invited or apply in different kinds of conferences to run as technical program chair. What is typically forgotten is how you do the other side. So how do you become the general chair of CHI? For me, that was an unusual one. Because I changed my research area 15 years ago. And when I changed the area, I was working with Manfred Chiligi. And he was the general chair of CHI 2004 in Vienna. And he asked me to help him out as an assistant of the general chair. So I started all my career as running already the biggest conference. And since 2004, I have been active in all these kind of things. And 16 years later, I have become the general chair. So if you're just at the beginning of your career, becoming a general chair might take 10 to 15 years. That's what I'm saying. So don't expect to be there. Sometimes it's really a growth, and you have to learn the different kinds of conferences, and you should run smaller conferences before you want to spend about 18 months, maybe 24 months of your life running a $3 million US budget and coordinating about 450 volunteers. So that's something also that you should make as a clear choice in your career then afterwards. How much time do you want to have for these kind of activities? How much time do you want to do on other things in your career? And that's always a balancing act between what your institution allows you to do and what work you have to do. So volunteering can have very, very different kinds of paths. And I think the current EC is doing a very good job in supporting people to see what positions are available by running public calls. And you just follow on the website or on our social media accounts. And you will see that there are lots of opportunities coming up directly at the EC, but of course more likely also in one of our numerous conferences.
Thanks.
Also wanted to emphasize that you could also you could participate in international conferences, but you could also do a lot of things locally. And to support local activities, the easiest way of doing it is to actually support chapters. So you can actually, if there is no chapter in your area, then you could form a chapter, and it's there is a process laid out. I can see Eunice is there. I don't know if she wants to add anything about how to form a chapter. Or if there is already a chapter in your area or in your university, then just go and volunteer there locally and do what is locally relevant to your community there. And that is another great way of volunteering also. Yeah.
Great.
I wonder if Eunice is there or not there. Okay, maybe she can come back later in her AMA.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, to wrap up, it's a question in kind of Regina's area, but any EC member who's on the call can add their thoughts as well. So why, I want to go back to something that Regina said earlier. Why should someone become a SIGCHI member? This is the question. So I don't know if Regina wants to start, and any EC members who are here can chime in, but yeah, why should someone become a SIGCHI member?
I can give you the honest answer of my students. So the honest answer of my students, of course, is you become a SIGCHI member because once you go to a conference, you get a discount. So if SIGCHI is about the monetary value, that's the benefit you get. So this is the value. On the other hand side, being a member of a local community, being a member of your neighborhood support also has different kinds of values. And SIGCHI is helping you to represent your values that you have in research to other research areas and other communities. So by being a SIGCHI member, you show that you care about HCI, that you care about HCI research, and being a member is something that helps you show these kind of values that you represent, either by becoming a member because you don't have time to volunteer, or also being a member to show that your values are represented by that kind of community. So it's always, of course, if it's about, you know, there are different types of supermarkets. So we have supermarkets where it's about to get the best thing or the reasonably best thing to the lowest price. And there are some supermarkets which produce things in a way where, you know, people to care about it, they have a certain kind of quality. Membership, of course, is about these kind of things. I think, as Aniruddha said, the current SIGCHI membership fee, especially for students, is less than $50 US. And it's a way that you show that you care and that you're part of a community. And of course, you have some many benefits afterwards, because of course, all our funding instruments afterwards, like applying for a student travel grant and whatever, require you to be a member. So yes, that's also one of the reasons why membership is, it's kind of a gate that not everyone can use it, but it's especially made for members.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, or sort of add on to the last point that Regina made. So SIGCHI offers opportunities for the community members to organize events like summer schools or winter schools, or you can also apply as a student. If you're a student, you can also apply for student travel grants, the Gary Marsden Fund, and so on. And each of these funds also has a requirement that you are or you have been a member. Yeah, and I think Eunice is saying that you can actually send her an email, and she has put that in the chat. If you have any questions about how to form chapters or any other questions about chapters. So Eunice is the VP for chapters. Yeah, so as a member, you get an open door to all these opportunities that the SIGCHI funds, and so make sure that you are a member before you apply to any of those. I mean, many of them require you to be a member before you apply. So that's another economic advantage. But I think personally, I think for most people who are, I mean, you have to. So one of the problems is that people don't realize that they are not SIGCHI members, and they want to be SIGCHI members, or they assume that they are SIGCHI members and they have forgotten to renew their membership. But they actually want to be part of the family of SIGCHI, and that is, I think, the primary reason why what prompts people to actually pay the $6 or the $20 or the $50 or whatever it might be for you in different countries. So yeah, so that I think is what prompts most people. So I don't know if anybody else. Julie, you want to say something? Neha and Lunis?
Yeah. I mean, I might just add, at least for my part, I mean, there's obviously the financial benefits, conference discounts, access to travel grants and different things. You also actually get a lower article processing charge if you're a member. But I mean, at least for my part, the most important thing is that I see kind of SIGCHI membership as the first step that you can take towards shaping SIGCHI into an organization that you like. I mean, certainly all of us on the EC volunteered for these roles because we want to change the organization into what kind of a vision that maybe we have, or we want to have an impact, we want to have an influence. And I think if you're not a member, even if the kind of concept of membership is maybe a bit outdated, I mean, if you're not a member, you don't have that first step to get a seat at the table. I think it's hard to really feel like you kind of have a voice or have a change over the organization if you're not even a member, right? So I always see it as kind of the first step to kind of participating and joining and being part of this organization. And we all have opinions about how it's run and what it does and its policies and everything about it. And being a member is the first step to kind of having a say in that. So that's something I really encourage people. If you like SIGCHI, great, join it. If you don't like SIGCHI, but you're part of the HCI community, join it and change SIGCHI. That's what it's all about. So I always see like membership as being part of that. And certainly we all have lots of opinions about how this organization should work and run and stand for. So joining gives you that first step to being part of it. Do any other EC members or anything want to say anything about membership before we wrap up and say goodbye for the session?
I'm just going to echo what you said, Julie. Join it and change it. That's all.
Just wanted to say, it's not only, it's also one of the things for changing is that you vote. So that's also for members, and this is the election coming up. So it's your way to participate, to see who you want to see as the future leaders, and take this opportunity also as a member to change the things you think are necessary.
Brilliant. So I think unless there's any other questions, we'll kind of wrap up here for today. Really big thanks to Regina and Aniruddha for kind of taking their time to answer questions, especially things about their jobs and some tough questions, I hope, that kind of give people a view into what's going on in the EC. And thank you for everybody who put in questions, who participated on Slido and the Zoom, and for all the EC members who are here to also support and add commentary throughout. So that closes this session. Thank you everyone for attending. This session has been recorded and will be put available on YouTube for people who couldn't make this time shortly. So thank you very much, and that closes this session.
Thank you, Julie, for being the moderator and waking up so early in the morning to be part of this. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for whatever time zone you are in, whatever day, time or night time you have for being with us, and all the best.
All the best. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.